Oh my God, I forgot all about these episodes and shit.
And it's tough because, like, they're funny because, like, you see how ridiculous they are now. But there are people who are like, yeah, the Jews are moving in.
But nobody was complaining.
That's true.
Well, because it had a morality to it where he would learn his little lesson. You know what I mean? It wasn't, you know.
When Sammy Davis kissed him in the lips.
Yeah.
That's that time, or when the Puerto Rican guy found his wallet.
I don't remember that one.
There was an episode where a Puerto Rican guy found his wallet, and he couldn't fucking believe the Puerto Rican was returning it. You know, it was such a sign of the time.
Right.
And when the Puerto Rican came over, Edith was like, "Hi, Hector." And it's the guy that was the typical Puerto Rican at the time. He, in fact, he was the original cat. He was Julio. He was Julio on Sanford and Son.
Oh,
he
okay.
played every Puerto Rican. And he comes in and he goes, "Mr. Bunker, here's the wallet I found, and the cash is still in it." And he goes, "Yeah, you know, you're a hero. You know, I never expected a bump." He goes, "Edith, don't just stand there. Give him something to drink." Right? And then he turns, she goes, "I don't know what to offer him." And he, you know, like, the guy's right there. And he goes, "I don't know what Puerto Ricans drink." He goes, and he goes, "How about some pineapple juice?" You know, like, and even as a kid, it didn't offend me in no way at all.
Well, I think it must be interesting, like, for Lee to watch it because we remember it from when we were kids. So
Wait, can you imagine
it
that
made sense in the time.
television today? Like, can you imagine that on listen, Sanford and Son came on at 8:30 on Fridays. Jeez. After Chico and the Man on 8. Okay, it was Chico and the Man, and with Freddie Prinze, which was I can't explain to you what it meant to a guy like me on Friday night. I didn't do anything. Till 9 o'clock. So Chico and the Man and Sanford and Son was over with. And then they had Crime Story with Andrew Dice Clay. Nobody fucking remembers that either. It was, no, I'm lying to you people. That was earlier. Then Freddie Prinze died. Then that whole thing went down the tubes. And then they came out with Miami Vice at 9 and Crime Story with Andrew Dice Clay at 10. That was a good fucking show. But who gives a fuck?
No, it was a good show, yeah, for sure.
So on Friday nights, Lee, if you were 13, you watched Sanford and Son. You just didn't. Your parents went out on Fridays, and you were like, "Thank God, bye. Yeah, we're gonna do homework. Fuck you. We're gonna get a pizza from Sal's, and we're gonna sit here and watch Chico and the Man and laugh, and then we're gonna fucking watch." I still remember watching him say the nigger thing about, "Don't you arrest any black people. Where the fuck are they? Look at all these niggas in here." I still remember sitting in my living room with Alona Mertens, a German girl that was beautiful. And her and I on Friday, she was 2 years older than me, and she had a boyfriend who moved to Miami, so me and her boyfriend were friends, and we did that on Friday. So she would come over. Eventually we made out, and I sucked her titties and shit.
Because it always goes that way.
Yeah.
Do you remember What's Happening? That was my favorite.
What's Happening? Good Times.
Yeah.
The White Shadow about basketball.
Oh, yeah, that was a
team.
big one, yeah.
That was, and these were all shows. It's funny, Gerard Carmichael had a short-lived show on NBC that I really enjoyed. And it was, I really enjoyed the guy from In Living Color on it. He was great. Tiffany Haddish was great. But what I really liked about the Gerard Carmichael show, that it had to do with issues of what was going on right now, today. You know, that's what was going on in the 70s. People were moving on up. Like I always tell people, I'm from North Bergen, New Jersey, but I'm really from Hoboken. Because the people I grew up with were all from Hoboken. They were people who moved on up to North Bergen and bought a house. Like they moved out of a tenement, and North Bergen was the new thing to move up to. So North Bergen was all Irish and Italian. I can't imagine when I moved into the block. And they were like, there's a new spec kid on the block. So I understood all this type of shit. I got it.
It's tough now because, like, I grew up in a time when this wasn't allowed. Like, I've heard stories like Jews not allowed into country clubs, and I've heard stuff like that before, but I never really experienced it. When I grew up, everyone was, I guess it was like the start of the PC world or whatever you want to call it. But it doesn't hurt my feelings, but I can see, like, if you grew up in it, maybe it's something you're just you're used to. But I can't imagine not being able to move into a neighborhood because they're not gonna like the Jews are living there. That's a weird thought to have.
Yeah, but that's how it was. I mean, that it was. Well, even Trump got in trouble with his dad because they wouldn't rent to black people. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it was completely like that. It was very.
And I like it's interesting now looking at like Boston. There's this part called Dorchester where it's a lower income area. There's a lot of black people there now. But when my mom's parents were moving to the area, there was all Jewish people. So it's interesting how. Like, sometimes I'm like, why do all these Chinese people live together? And it's like, maybe that's the only place they had to live. And now they have a little area, but it's just something that we never really have to think about at all.
Yeah.
Well, when they migrate, like, that's very interesting, the migration. It was really great when I did the 23andMe. And you and Terry were talking about the Chinese thing.
Right.
About how I had a little bit of Chinese. What the fuck are you laughing about? I know you're laughing about.
But should I say it about?
Yeah.
I was dating this Asian guy, right? And so Joey would always be like, "You going out with the Doyson?" And I'm like, "What the fuck is a Doyson?" He goes like, "That was the name we called Asian people when I was a kid, Chinese people." And then I was like, "Shut up, that's so fucked up." And then he does the Ancestry in Me or 23andMe, and he's like, "I'm 2%." I'm like, "Oh my god, you're a Doyson."
I'm a Doyson. And then you justified it. You said that the Chinese, way before Columbus, took a tour around the world.
Well, there's also, I read a book once where there was a great armada as a Chinese empire fell that had gone out, like, because they would go out for like 3 to 7 years or whatever, and that they went all the way around the world, and it'd be a lot of ships together, an armada. And so if a ship crashed, they would take them on, but as soon as they hit land, they had to go on the land, and then they would just kind of, meld into the people that were there, and that genetically, that's why they can tell and say Asian. Like, that makes complete sense because they probably went all the way around and were up in Cuba. They went all the way around, and they had certain types of chickens that genetically test, like that are in South America, are Asian, have some kind of Asian component, and they say that's part of it. I mean, it's interesting when you start thinking about history like that, No,
and especially your history. Like, I ended up west. Well, I always knew, because the Cuban history, I always knew that the island was originally Indians. Columbus came, and then the slave trade, and then people from Spain went there after a war, and you had this big fucking galash of people. Irish went there during the Battle of the Boyne, so you had all this, just like anything else. There was a big Jewish community, and like, I couldn't believe how big the Jewish community was down there.
In Cuba, they have a big Chinese community, right?
Biggest Chinatown in the world, from China until 1960 or something just outrageous. And when Bourdain went, he went to the Chinatown. They were like, it's not Chinatown no more. Like, all the Chinese left, like all that.
Oh, really?
And there's only one left now that we've discussed. There's only one Cuban Chinese cook left.
Oh, really?
And he's on 79th Street in Broadway, like Harry Dodd. There's even a video about him on YouTube. Like, he's the last guy left. Like, that's it.
Oh.
That when I was a kid, there were probably 5 of those Chinese Cuban restaurants in the area. Now they're down to 1.
How crazy must it be to move to a different country? Like, now it might be a little bit easier, but like I'm like 3rd or 4th generation, maybe even more. I don't know about you, Felicia, but Joey, I mean, you immigrated from a different country. It must be terrifying. It must be like, I don't think I can even understand what it's like.
I don't think that it was as terrifying because of my age.
That's true.
Right. Yeah.
It wasn't really a thought. Like, if I really, 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 really sit and think, if you ask me anything about Cuba, there's nothing I remember except looking at the ocean one day. And I remember driving with my dad in a car like that. But I also remember driving through the Lincoln Tunnel with my dad, sitting in the driver's seat with no seatbelt, and you could still drive. Like, I have more memories of my dad in the United States than I do in Cuba. Like, I don't remember none of that shit. I remember going to kindergarten and the language barrier. Like, I was telling Felicia, when I was a kid, I wouldn't eat chocolate till nighttime. And people go, why do you eat chocolate at nighttime? I says, because that's what it says, chocolate late.
Yeah.
So I thought it was chocolate late, you
Yeah,
know? So I didn't
yeah.
know. Like when I was 5, I would always save chocolate for the nighttime.
Yeah.
Why do you drink? Because it's chocolate late. You know, like all those things to me seem interesting. That's why I try to be nice to people, but I'm extra nicer to immigrants. Because I remember those 2 or 3 year window, how insecure I felt. And it wasn't just the insecurity. I tell a joke on stage that it really bothers me to tell this joke when I say it about that time period. I was allergic to maple syrup. Mm-hmm. I was a really sickly kid. So it wasn't bad enough that I was sickly. Now I was an immigrant. So I was to these little white kids on 88th Street. I was this fucking spick pariah that was always with bandages, or you know, I always had bandages on my arm from getting blood drawn.
So, like, not only are you new, which is scary.
Yeah, so
you're Spanish.
couldn't speak Spanish.
Wow.
And I was fucking sickly. That fucking destroyed me. And my dad had died. Mm-hmm. So my mom said every time a door opened, you would look at the door.
Right.
You know, so I was just a fucking mess. But I still remember, like, I don't think somebody made fun of me. I think somebody said I wasn't American, and in my mind, I was like, you know what, fuck you. I'll prove to you I'm an American. I'm going to go eat hot dogs. Like, I still remember thinking, if I had enough hot dogs, I'd be a fucking American. Like, things like that.
Right.
That
Did your mom already speak English when she came over here?
to say yes and no to that answer, you have to know my mom. My mom spoke English when it was convenient to her.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
that's it.
Yeah.
She spoke as good as English as you could when it was convenient to her.
Right.
When it wasn't convenient to her, she played it off. So it got to the point where she wanted me to speak English outside the house. Inside the house, I had to speak Spanish. She encouraged for me to learn English and keep the Spanish, which I didn't want to.
Well, I think about your mom all the time, like how strong and strong-willed she must have been to be able to go through that period of time as an immigrant, you know, as a single mother, as someone who is working in an industry that is not ladylike. You know, how she just... That's pretty amazing, you know?
It's not that part of her life that intrigues me about my mother. It's 1955 through 1961 or 2, which is the most intriguing part of me, that I wish there was a way I knew everything that happened. Because it was just a mess. Like the warrant, her going to the Bronx, her meeting somebody on the street and them getting jobs as runners, you know, for a bookmaker in the neighborhood. And then the bookmaker has a heart attack, and they're the ones that know how to do it. Like, you know, it's like Lee is smart. He knows that the cops are looking for male runners. It's 1955 in the Bronx. He knows they're looking for male runners. So he enlists 2 16-year-old cute girls to run the numbers for him. Well, guess what? The guy gets some type of heart attack. So guess who has to run his business? These 2 17 or 18-year-old girls now. And they had to maneuver their way and keep it quiet. Because if the neighborhood found out that Lee was sick, they wouldn't pay the girls. The girls would get... So they had to figure out a way, these 2 girls. And, you know, I don't know the whole story, but that's the story. And then somewhere along the line, she met my father and went back to Cuba and had my sister and me. And then they would go back and forth.
They met in New York?
Yeah, they met in New York.
That.
Yeah, they met in New York as young kids. Yeah, I thought they had met in... No. They met in New York in like the weirdest fucking way. My uncle told me, he goes, no. He goes, she got to New York, and bam, a year later they were hooked up together. And then he was doing his thing, she was doing her thing. And I, you know, like he goes, did you know your mom lived in Venezuela?
What?
No, I did not know that. Like my uncle told me, he goes, yeah, she was in Venezuela with your father for 6 months.
Oh, no.
Then they lived on an island.
Wow.
They lived in
Curacao?
Curacao. They lived in Curacao for 6 months. Like they were like 2 fucking whatever. Then they went to Cuba, and I said,
So what do you think they were doing? Like, what's your guess that, you know, what were they doing? Because they didn't have a lot of money, right?
They were investing the money from the numbers they were making. We're going in like fucking Marines, you understand me?
Welcome to church, motherfucker.